G'day, I'm Gray and this is Flora. Flora is the newest addition to our household. Now, I'm not allowed to take care of the plants in our house because I kill them, no offense Flora, but I get to aesthetically decorate them. So today I'm going to show you how to decorate a planter just like we've done here for Flora. So let's go make it. Things we'll need for today is a device that's connected to Design Space, planter, obviously, cutting machine, a trimmer, some accessories which we'll get in throughout the job, some paint, a dabber, transfer tape for transferring our design, and our smart stencil vinyl. Okay, so Flora's kind of spiky, but I think she's kind of like soft and kind on the inside. So we're going for a kind of softer, simpler design today to match Flora's personality. Now, I've gone through Design Space and I've found a ready-to-make project, which I really like. So we're gonna go in here and all we're gonna do is change the name to Flora. Now, color isn't really important, but I want it to look consistent on my screen. One thing I want to do quickly though is just check the size. So I'm going to take Flora carefully out of her little planter. Sorry girl. And measure how big I want my design. So I don't really have a good measuring tool here. So what I'm going to do is actually use the back of this smart stencil vinyl because it's got 1 inch grid on the back. Inches, Americans love it. So I think I want this design to be about 3.5 inches in width. So I'm going to go in here to my width, change this to 3.5. Now, pretty happy with that. I think that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is just make sure it's all center aligned, which looks good. And at this point, I think we're ready to make it. So we're going to go over here, click Make It. Now the next thing that pops up on Design Space is it's going to prompt you and ask you, are you cutting on a mat or without a mat? Now because this is a smart material, we don't need a mat, that's why it's smart. So without mat, Cricut Smart Materials only, click Continue. Unfortunately, my design is pretty hard to see, but we kind of know what the spacing is. So what I'm going to do is rotate it 90 degrees. Now, because I'm going to be painting through the stencil here, I want to give a border all the way around the design. So I want to make sure that I've got about 1 inch outside of that design. Now, that looks pretty good to me. So we're going to go and continue. And now Design Space is going to look to connect to my machine. And first thing it's going to do is it's going to pop up and it's going to ask what material I'm using. So if we click up here and browse for our materials, we're going to type in stencil. Smart stencil. Little hot tip here. Click this little star and that's just going to save it in your favorites for next time you access. So now that we have Smart Stencil selected, click Done. It's going to prompt you to check and make sure you've got everything set up in your carriage right. So no tool in clamp A, fine point blade in clamp B, and then load material. So we've got nothing in clamp A, we've got the fine point blade in clamp B, and we're ready to load our material. So I'm going to press it up and make sure it's against these rollers on the left and right side. And I'm going to apply even pressure. And I want to do this when I click load because if I don't, this is what's going to happen. So now I'm clicking load. And the machine's going to go through its pre-feed cycle. So what it's going to do is it's going to load the material, make sure that the length of it is long enough for the design that we've got, and cut out our design. When we're ready, it's prompting us to click go, and now the magic happens. And it's finished. So we're going to cut it down now, and like I said earlier, we want to keep about an inch or so of buffer around the whole design, just so that we've got room for when we're applying our paint. So trimming down my material just a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, that is pretty good. Okay, we're going to weed out the design. Now, because it's a stencil, we want to actually remove the design itself because we're going to be using that design as the negative for applying the paint. So with my little weeder tool here, I'm going to poke and pull all of my letters out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer my design onto the transfer tape because then we're going to get it onto the planter. So here we go. Now applying my transfer tape over my design, and I'm going to use my scraper tool just to make sure we've got all of the design done. Now, little tip is do it from the back as well. It just helps like adhere to the transfer tape. And then we're ready to take the backer off the Smart Stencil. And this is pretty much the final step before we transfer it onto the planter. Now, be careful here and just make sure the design is transferring. You've got these negative spaces inside the letters. We want to make sure the whole design transfers over. So that is all transferring really well. Now I'm going to get my planter ready. So careful here, Flora. Don't worry, buddy. I'll never leave you. Okay, and applying our stencil. So I want to grab a few things just to make sure my plan is stable, okay? We're ready to apply it. So we're going to apply it from the middle and line it up. And starting in the middle, yeah. And I'm going to kind of press outwards. The same way I would be applying a screen protector for my phone, that kind of style. So starting from the inside and working out, it's just going to allow for an even application. So as you see, this is starting to apply pretty well. Now I wouldn't worry about little spots like this. We can go in afterwards and clean those up. I'm still going to go in with my scraper tool and just make sure I've got good adhesion, particularly around the letters, because the letters is where it really matters, because that's where we're applying paint. Okay, and then now removing transfer tape. And again, you don't want to go too quick because you want to just make sure your design adheres really well and transfers. And so far this looks pretty good. Okay. I'm just going in and making sure everything looks good. And now that we have that, I think we're good to paint. So you can use any paint really, that's up to you, or any brush. You could spray paint if you wanted to. I'm just going to dab this paint on. Now this is dab in the paint sense, not that, yeah, the sense of the backstage crew right now. Dab or daub, because I always got confused with that. I think daub is a different style, but if you are following along at home right now, you're doing a great daub. Okay, enough stupid puns, I'm sorry. Now this is applying pretty well. I want it to be like a medium kind of thickness layer. And just make sure I get all of my design in there. Typically you might want you want to remove the stencil with a wet paint just so it doesn't stick. We tested a little bit on another area and this paint works fine if it's a dry removal. So I'm going to set this guy down and wait for my paint to dry. Oh, you just caught me watching my paint dry. Lucky for you, you didn't have to watch that, but it's dry. So we get to remove the stencil now. So let's see how we go. Let's take a leap of faith. That's transferred pretty well. There we go, there's the A, R, O, L and F. Bang. All right. Now it's going to remove the little negatives in the letters. Flora, this is looking fantastic. Let's get you in there. And there you have it. There's Flora, happy as you want, in a new planter, looking pretty fly for a cacti. So I had fun making this. I hope you did too. As you saw, I made a few little boo-boos. It doesn't matter, you can just take it off and reapply it. The key is to try it and give it a go. So can't wait for you guys to do it at home, and please share what you make. Look forward to seeing it. Cheers.